In this video, Victor Davis Hanson breaks down what he believes is the root cause of everything we see going on today in the political world. He seems to relate what has happened in the left versus right conundrum as a purposeful behavior, not just accidental and not just a knee jerk reaction, but almost planned, methodical for us to plan something that we have never, ever, ever seen before in the political landscape since the invention of the United States of America. So we're going to listen to him and see what he says, if it has validity, if we agree, disagree. We're going to take as much of a neutral position as we can. However, if his conversation spills over into a moral or ethical region, I think we can hold our position to say we can say something about that. So let's see what he has to say.
These are not going to stop. These protests are not going to stop. They're going to go on and they're going to go on. So they know what they're doing. And Trump said, I'm not going to do this again. I did it in 2020. I listened to the Pentagon. I listened to federal officials. I listened to state governors. And I realized something. They wanted the violence and they let it go out of control. And they saw the burning. And then they blamed me and said, Donald Trump talks a great game, but there's chaos in the streets.
I have to say that breakdown seems pretty fair, pretty accurate. And I think we have said this before on Too Strong, that they seem to have a plan, and the plan is a diversion from conversation. And it's more than just a left thing. It's both sides. They seem to have a inability to want to come to the table to actually discuss the topic at hand, but instead either throwing mud, stones, or in some cases lead. And if it is at this point, in this juncture, there is one side doing it more than the other, I think that the tactic is working to divert all conversation away from peace and growing the country into trying to polarize the country into one way of thinking versus the other. I can definitely see that.
And then when they went into Lafayette Park and tried to torch the historic St. John's Episcopal Church, and then they tried to cross the street and storm the White House grounds and sent me into a bunker with my family. The New York Times and others said he was basically a coward and he forced down. So we're not going to do that anymore. What's the sum total of all this? The sum total is the entire left-wing narrative has collapsed. The narrative is that there was just a lot of peaceful people walking around, and then these vicious Gestapo people snatched them. And then people who were legitimately working and wants to go, they took some time off work for a peaceful protest.
And we've heard that before. 2020, we heard that exact same statement of we don't want violence, while at the same time promoting the exact same violence that they say they're not condoning. On the side of Trump, on the other hand, stating that he had listened to people to decide whether or not to engage or not engage. I think I'll put it to you like this. You can push people so far, and eventually they're going to just say, you know what, I'll be what you think I am. If you think I am a violent and a bigot and all those terms, you know what, fine, I'm that. And not only am I going to admit that I'm that, I'm going to behave like that so that you have more reason. But not only that, that way I'm protecting myself. I give you a reason to be right, and I give myself a reason to protect. I think we're going to see more of that in the next coming years, too.
There was no cars. They were not calling automatically driven cars to have them assembled to blow them up. They were not blowing up people's cars. They were not throwing rocks at cars. They were not attacking highway patrol vehicles. They were not spitting in people's faces. They were not burning American flags. They were not failing to disperse. They were not taking over 101. That's what they were doing. And so the left, it was like the 2020 optics where somebody said mostly peaceful demonstrations and the flames were going up. There was a good scene on CNN or MSNBC where they said the same thing, and there was a car on fire. So I think that the left now, and what do I mean by the left? I'm talking about Representative Torres, who said, get the F out, ICE of my, and then Karen Bass, we won't stand for this. And then Gavin Newsom, this is chaotic, this is reckless. And then a lot of really weird stuff he said. Hey, Tom Homan, come and get me. Kind of braggart. Just a punking him. And then we had his tiff with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. We might just withhold federal taxes because we pay $80 billion more.
And that rhetoric they know it induces a certain behavior and reaction from the person they say it to. Again, this is not necessarily a polarized one side or the other, but at the moment, there is one side doing it currently, not the other. So we can indeed at least focus right now on what the is, not what they might be, and what the has been. This is the now. And if you're going to be saying that you want a peaceful uh, end to things, stoking the flames of division by saying, I bet you won't come arrest me, or if you're going to do it, come and arrest me, or we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and saying something that's blatantly obviously not true based on what we can visually see, it seems as though they're trying to not associate themselves with one reality, or two, create in the other person's mind a sense of psychosis. It's not what you're seeing. And since you're not seeing it, your anger is not justified. And you being upset with me is your fault. I think they used to call that gaslighting and narcissism. I think that was two of the terms that would possibly be used that would kind of explain this particular behavior. The problem we have here is that it's so disjointed, you won't ever get to the bottom of why it's occurring or how to fix it.
Than we get in services from the federal government. I thought he was Jefferson Davis, maybe. And then he said, and that pays the federal government's bills. Come on, Gavin, it's one little over 1% of all federal revenues. Why don't you just realize that you're polling 27%? 2% want you to be the nominee. You're going nowhere, and you're blowing up what was left of your viability politically. You're going to be termed out. What are you going to do? Because people are looking at you, and this comes on the heels of the fire in Los Angeles, when you couldn't say a word about Karen Bass junketing, or the deputy mayor phoning in bomb threats, or the head of water and power has no idea why the reservoir is dry, or that fire chief who was fired talking about DEI whether his hydrants dry, or why you wouldn't let people clean up their hills of fuel for the fire.
You know, we had covered that particular issue and realized there was a method to that madness. Maybe there's a method to this madness. At the time, we took a look at the areas that were affected by that fire. And the areas affected by the fire just so happened to be certain spots where they had planned to put these 15-minute cities. Now, the thought process was you're doing that because you could not buy out that area. People were not willing to necessarily give up their spaces, whether that be homes or businesses, in order to facilitate a 15-minute city. But if you got them out of there with a different means by telling people you can't fight the fire, we're going to make sure it continues to burn, or even making the fire yourself, not saying that they did. If that be the case, then you can then go back, repurchase that area, repurpose it, and then you have your 15-minute city without having to try and buy people out, force them out, because it's already done for you by nature. His point, though, is that they have no leg to stand on anymore because they're kind of fighting a losing battle. It's a battle of attrition at this point. Either the people are going to start seeing through some things, or they're not going to go along with you trying to do something that they're against, even though you might say it's for their good. People have a way of self-preserving at some point, and at some point it might occur to them that, wait, they don't really have my best interest at heart. So how do I go about this? With Gavin, he has to think about the long-term effect of his actions now, because to the guy's point, Mr. Davis's point, you have to start looking at, if you do want to either run for governor again or become a different person in government, say like president, doing what you're doing now is a losing battle. You're not going to get to where you want to get to. Will that get through? I think emotionality is winning at this point.
So it's just a 1-2 punch, and Gavin Newsom is in big trouble. The biggest trouble, though, is the whole illegal immigrant deportation, because there was a CBS poll that showed that 54% still want deportation. That rises to 75% when they're told they're violent criminal. Then they said they were just sweeping people off the street. They went into an employer who was trying to create an illegal alien workforce, and among the people that they arrested, they were, charged with assault, charged with attempted murder. There were some terrible people. And so as that all gets out, the left then looks ridiculous. And now what they're doing, they're not only getting money from these NGO nonprofit left wing that are, by the way, we're paying it for it in California, $45 million in taxpayers' money. But they're not only getting riot gear to hand out to people, now they're handing out American flags because they're thinking, somebody called up and said, hey, I'm a U.S. Senator. I'm supporting you. I like what you're doing, but you're making it impossible. I got an election coming up in November. What is this?
Now, that probably makes the most sense of anything because what's been the running mantra? This is America. Now, if you remember some time ago, the statement when it linked it to this is America wasn't something that you wanted America to thrive on. If you remember correctly, and this is why I say emotionality does not always lend to logic because logic has to stay fairly consistent. Okay. So if you're going to associate America with one thing, but then on the other hand, a few years later, try to backtrack to say it means this now, you have to pick one, especially with this particular polarizing topic. Say, you told me that America by nature hates a certain people of color and that that particular version of America needs to go bye-bye. And now you come forward with the flag and promoting it by saying, but this is America, the land of the free and opportunity. And we need to make sure that people understand that this is America for, like, say, Statue of Liberty. So which one is it? Is it by nature against those people and they want it gone? Or is it by nature accepting of those people and wanted to stay? This is the problem that some people that are sober minded are looking at it and thinking, which one do you want? And the people that are pushing this idea of it's neither, but both at the same time, really don't have a leg to stand on anymore because the problem is it's not even long enough apart from both protest types for us to say that we can believe you have both in your heart. One was just the other day, and we clearly heard you saying one thing, and today it's the message has changed, but your method is the same. Limit people's movements, fight them if they don't agree, and in some cases, destroy the buildings that they have and possessions. So we know that your tactics are the same, but your messaging seems to be flip flopping ever so often.
So, suppress the Mexican flag. There's also an existential question. I mentioned it on Laura Ingram the other night. I mentioned this 20 years ago in Mexifornia. I had a student and he was waving the Mexican flag during the controversy over Prop 187, and they were burning the American flag on the Cal State campus. So I said to him, why are you waving the flag under no circumstances of the country, under no circumstances you want to go back? And you're burning the flag of the country that you say you want to stay in, even though you're here illegally. And he couldn't answer that. And so it was so weird to see these people spitting on the American flag and burning it, and then Mexican flags everywhere. And so is it confusion, or do they think all these Mexican flags say that LA is now part of Mexico and they are trying to remind everybody? Look at the illogical emotional response and see if there's a logic to it.
I have seen that sentiment now coming on the rise because people have been asking for a logical answer to the protest. I've seen the new push to try and say that, well, all of America belongs to South America technically because we were a part of them before. In fact, most of the southern states was part of Mexico. That's a whole nother geography lesson we can't go into right now. That while that may be a landmass question, by way of war, conquering treaties, it is no longer the case. So where you might feel that way, what it is by law and how law is come about, meaning that you go into a war or somebody conquers your land or you sign over use of your land or you just sign over the permissions by selling it, it is no longer yours. So that whole argument goes out the door, but they're appealing to the emotion, not to the fact. But at the same time, their emotional people are appealing to a factual thing of the past. It keeps people in a mental conundrum, is what it really does, which is why when you ask them certain questions, they can't answer them. The reason they can't answer is they're stuck in the middle of something that they have not put themselves in. They were put there, and since they don't know how they got there, they can't get out. So logically, the people that are in charge of it are you really, really pretty savvy about how they're doing this stuff. They know the answer, and they know that they're not necessarily making sense, but they're also banking on people not being aware of how they got to the place that they're in, so they can't make sense of it either.
So if that's true, all these young people that are either here illegally or the children of people who came illegally, for the most part, maybe they were parents were legal, maybe they were legal, but they may all had one thing in common. They said that Mexico was not for them.
Hmm.
So they come over to a different paradigm, completely different. Its history is completely different. This is not Spanish Catholic conquistador
Hmm.
colonization. Remember, the Spanish crown would not let anybody, unless they were Catholic and Spanish, go into their colonies. And the vast majority were males. North America, Canada, the United States were largely Protestant
Yep.
from the British Isles and then Western Europe. And from the very beginning, it was mostly what the left calls settler.
And that's my point about not going into a whole convoluted area of history. He broke it down very succinctly, which is good. I would not have been able to do that, and I'm not going to say why. I just know he did it much better than I could. And therein lies the problem, that when you have two competing ideas, the only real solution is either one of two things: we fight, or we come to an impasse and say, mine is mine, yours is yours. And if we want to split use and ownership, then we have to come to a different arrangement. Or you sign yours over because I have enough money, you need money, or you sign yours over because, or sign mine over because I need the money. One of those things have to happen.
Not conquistadors, it was families, Plymouth Rock. So it was a very different paradigm. So they're saying that we left our paradigm because we wanted your paradigm. And now we've got 1 million illegals and it's our paradigm. But why would you wave the flag then if you don't like that paradigm?
That's my stomach hurts because I'm thinking about, listen, this is what you call having your cake and eating it too, but also not liking the cake you actually have. But because you have the cake, you feel the need to have to eat it. You don't necessarily want to throw the cake away. It's definitely not your favorite cake. Say like it's lemon meringue. Not everybody likes lemon meringue. But you have the cake and people are looking at you, but you have cake. And then you want chocolate cake. But then the person doesn't want to give you chocolate cake, but you also have cake already. And they tell you, well, you have cake. And now you are going to make a treaty and you have to eat your cake in front of them to prove that your cake is good. So because they're asking you for proof that what you have to offer is something I would want. And you don't like that cake, but now you have to eat it. And now you're upset. You're mad that you have to eat this cake. This is exactly where we are right now. I don't really want to wave this flag because I know what I'm actually experiencing down here. But because I'm still trying to keep something to spite the other person, I'm going to do it.
So carry the logic a little further. So now we have our Mexican flag and we've created a virtual Mexico in Los Angeles. Then somebody's going to say, but that's why we left. So I'm leaving LA to San Francisco. And you're going to say, well, we're going to go and wave Mexican flags and do it. Then we'll all go to Oregon. You see what I mean? It's totally incoherent. And then you had President Scheinbaum. God, doesn't she have anybody with a brain in Mexico advising her? So the first thing she said, these are our people and we're going to weigh in, we're going to provide them legal counsel. President Scheinbaum, if Americans are burning the Mexican flag in downtown Mexico City and they're protesting, waving Old Glory, first of all, your biggest problem would be restraining Mexican citizens would try to kill them.
Period. Look, period, point blank. Heck, anywhere you do that, you're going to be heck, you can't even go into certain cities in America wearing your another team's jersey. Okay, you go to Oakland. I don't advise anybody doing this. I really do not advise anybody. Please do not do this. Go into Oakland, down into the most Oakland part of Oakland, and you put on, let's say you wear a Dallas Cowboy shirt. Do that. See what happens to you. Better yet, put on a Chargers shirt. See what happens to you. Chiefs, wear a Chief shirt. See what, that's just sports. That's just sports. Imagine now doing that particular thing in a foreign country, wearing a foreign flag, waving it around, and acting as though that country should overtake the one you're in. See what happens. I guarantee you it's not going to be pretty. I'll warn you right now, it will not be pretty.
They would have no rights. You would jail them. And then if Donald Trump said to you, we're protecting our people in your country, we're going to come in and give them, what do you think you would do? Now, I think I know what you think the United States response will be. Do you realize there's a bill in Congress right now, President Scheinbaum? It has a lot of issues related to you. Finish the wall, 10,000 more Border Patrol, and tax remittances. And they're arguing about the percent, 2.5% to 3.5%. You get 63 billion, Central America, 60 billion. I will bet my life that we will hear somebody immediately say that's too little. If Mexico is interfering in our affairs and these people who are burning Los Angeles and assaulting people are on any federal or state health, housing, food, education, legal subsidy to free up money to send back to Mexico because Mexico either cannot or will not take care of its own needy, then that's not sustainable, and we're going to up that. So I would expect that this big, beautiful bill will have an element of 10% or 15%. That will cost her big mouth about $10 billion if that should happen.
Now, the other thing it might cost, it's not just in money. Um, we could be looking at something along the lines of if she is willing to be more confrontational, to possibly start doing things that are more uh, upsetting to the fabric of the United States citizenry by way of violence. What do I mean by that? Well, as much as we may not want to admit this, the people that are working for and through her are indeed the cartels. You know why? Because the cartels can't be functioning as openly as they do if they didn't have some sort of a deal, or the government was really afraid of them. So if that be the case, I can easily see this becoming something where the cartels in the United States actually become engorged in a war, albeit a smaller one, maybe not nukes and all that stuff, but you're talking about a massive amount of lives lost because they will probably involve civilian as opposed to just military personnel. And that could get really ugly really fast.
The second thing, President Scheinbaum, you are deliberately allowing China to fabricate, assemble telephones, computers, cells, cars, equipment in your country to evade a tariff. You're running up $171 billion. Do you really think with that surplus that you are colluding, if I could use that term, with the Chinese, do you think Donald Trump's not going to be angry about your activity and your interference into the internal affairs of the United States? You also have cartels, and they have been making about $20 billion killing Americans. So I think people are so angry. Remember the polls. It's 54%. I would give you another poll. The people that you are aligned with, if you look at the popularity of Mayor Karen Bass, it's in the 30s. If you look at Gavin Newsom's popularity, SurveyMonkey says the last 30 polls show him at 27%. Another poll shows that 2% of the Democratic Party want him as their nominee. However, there's two polls, as I said, 54% want deportations, but this is, I think, 75% want deportations immediately of anybody convicted of a crime. But when you look at polls of relations with you being Mexico and the United States, they have crashed. You're down to about 33% of the American people. And most importantly, on the first 100 days of Donald Trump, there was a poll, and they asked each specific group by gender and race, what's your sense of Donald Trump's first 100 days? It was positive, but Hispanics were 62%. So to whom are you trying to appeal to? The illegal aliens that may be the more dominant and burning? I don't know why people are not at work. How can you do this for 2 or 3 days, work days, and not be at work?
Well, I would answer that, but I have stuff to do. To his point, because there was a lot there, it was difficult to find a spot to jump in because it was making a lot of sense, and each statement had to link to the other one. To my point about the cartels, if that is how they're making most of their money, then that money has to be funneled somewhere because it's allowed. The only place it could go to would be the Mexican government. If the problem really is as bad as it is in Mexico, and it is getting pretty rampant, it explains why the travel to Mexico has decreased over the last 15, 20 years. Many people aren't going there just for leisure anymore. There might be an occasional few, and there might be like 3 or 5 spots down there that people frequent, but that's even getting less and less because the economy over here is not that good, so people aren't going. But when they can go, they're worried about if they're coming back. More and more, you're hearing about people not making it back from Mexico, or people going there for spring break and disappearing altogether. They have a problem on, and whether we want to pick sides or not, because the conversation revolves around the Democrat Party, they do have one major problem. And the major problem is the approval rate amongst people who can indeed vote. And it would explain why they want to replace that surplus with people who would like them because they're doing something in their favor. But you have to remember, this is something they've tried before, and it didn't always work out in their favor. However, this one might, because the amount of things they're offering, they didn't offer the other people that they were trying to get votes from this much. I think we know who we're talking about, but if that is how they're trying to go about it, they end up losing a certain portion of the United States population that they do indeed need those votes until the people that they want can vote. They're banking. This is like going against the house, and you're gone all in. You're taking a risk, a really big risk, hoping that either time runs out or that you have and get the kinds of cards that you want. With Trump in there, it's going to be difficult simply because he doesn't play the game the way most people play it. But it's intriguing to see people do what they're doing in terms of the riots. And his point about them not having to go to work, it's a twofold thing. Yes, they could not be working, or the place that they work for is all for their rioting, and they do give them the day off with pay. That could also be true.
But are Mexican American citizens, because I have a feeling that they have no sympathy with you or Mexico, and they're very happy in America as American citizens, and they don't like people expropriating the Mexican flag and acting as if they speak to those. So all these Mexican American and Central American left-wing representatives, maybe you'll say, well, Victor, somebody voted in them. Yes, but I have a feeling that they don't represent the majority of Mexican American citizens. I don't understand this. If you're here illegally and you're residing illegally, you're breaking the law. So why do they say you have a right? And if that would be true, well, why don't you just get rid of ICE entirely?
Well, real quick, I don't think that their point of view necessarily is that from a legal standpoint. Let me not say I don't think that. There are some that are not versed enough to make a decision about it, and they will say it's not illegal. And then there are some that are going at the whole point of it's not being illegal from the humanistic side. They're all people. No people are illegal. That's the new mantra that they're pushing. Why? Because it can appeal to the emotions. It doesn't have to be factual. It doesn't have to be based on law. I even saw this one TikToker, and she's got quite a large following. And she said this. She said, "You don't have to know the law or even understand anything about what's going on currently to have an opinion about these people being treated so unfairly." I'm like, okay, you need to understand that this is a human conversation, not a law conversation. The problem is, it is a law conversation. That's the only conversation it can be about, because by the nature of it, it is a breaking of a law that we have on the books about our country. So not being aware of it is something that you need to rectify within yourself so that you're not speaking on something so emotional with a factual base. That could get you into trouble. Secondarily, because you're going to see people actually being rounded up because of the law breaking, people are going to take that as a very authoritarian move because they do not understand the breaking of the law. They only associate it with the handling of people in what they think as an unethical way. Unfortunately, they win a lot of people over that way.
And just let people come in. And the answer is they come in areas that the people who are protesting, the elites, are not. Karen Bass doesn't worry about somebody hitting her state car and leaving the scene of the accident.
Right.
She She doesn't worry about going to the emergency room and seeing 20 people there that don't speak English and have no money and you can't get in. She doesn't go to the supermarket and be behind 4 people. She doesn't go look at her lawn and see a bunch of car seats and appliances dumped there. She doesn't have to deal with any of what most people deal with illegal immigration. She doesn't put her kid, if she has kids, she doesn't put them in the public school where they're rated in the bottom 10th percentile of all of them by test scores. She doesn't do that at all. Either does Gavin, either does Kamala Harris, either does Jerry. None of them do that. So no tax on cash tips. It has in there continuation of the 2017 tax cuts to stop what Biden wanted. They're in with the largest tax increase then accumulated in the history.
Now, if we remember correctly, former President Biden said on his campaign that he did indeed wanted to raise taxes. It was verbatim out of his own mouth. The issue here is, to his point about them not being a part of the general population and unseeing what we've been seeing, feeling what we've been feeling, is, and I understand that currently the president at the point in time we are in now doesn't have to deal with that either because he came in with money. It's not so much about the money as it is the inability to see somebody who doesn't have what you have, what they're going through. And even when you say you understand, you do the exact opposite that keeps the people going through what they're going through in that spot. And that's problematic. Because if you're going to tell me that that problem doesn't exist and I tell you it does, and then your next statement is to me, you just need to understand that they're people too. It's kind of counterproductive to the conversation. All you're telling me then is deal with it. Everybody's in that position. It's just going to have to stay that way until when? Yes. That's problematic.
But it also finishes the wall. And it hires 10,000 more Border Patrol agents. And it's got things in there that people hadn't appreciated, including myself. It's got a tax on university endowments. I think it's 2.5 in the beginning. It's got a tax on remittances to Mexico, which we've all talked about. That's $63 billion, everybody, and another $60 billion to Central America. And that money comes from people who are being subsidized by you, the taxpayer, to free up cash to send back to people in Mexico and Central America that those governments either cannot or will not help. So you, the taxpayer, are providing social services for the indigenous in Chiapas, Michoacan, by way of subsidizing expatriate illegal aliens here to free up their cash. And it addresses that.
Listen, I see this as problematic on two fronts. Let's just say they want to have help for their family. Okay, let's say we are 100% on board that they just come here. They know they can make money here and they're going to send money back to their family. It's like pouring water into a bucket full of holes when you send the money back there. That's the biggest problem. It's not like your money is really stretching when it gets down there. Your money is just being wasted and recycled into a system that made you come up here in the first place. It's not solving a thing. And the government down there knows exactly that's what you're doing. They're going to make sure you come and stay here because whatever money you send down there, guess who's getting it? Not your family, them. The government is going to get that funds, whether that be through the cartels or through the way that they've set up the economy down there. Your money is being poured into a hole and it will not come back to the family that you want to help. It may help a little because of how much you're sending. But in the grand scheme of things, you're going to see way more of your cash spent on the government than on your family. And they know that you're being fooled into doing it because emotionality has sent you over here. And then you have the folks that have been here are encouraging it, and they don't tell you the truth about it either. Now, with these next measures, it's going to kibosh that. It's going to actually mess with them, the Mexican government, because they can no longer get what they've been getting from this money being sent back. You just close that incentive loop off. Now, that might actually help you in the long run if the government doesn't see an end or a reason to be keeping your fleecing of your money coming down there. It's a stressing situation.
The whole thing hinges on Two things. Is the Congressional Budget Office a disinterested neutral party that says it will increase deficits over 10 years by up to 1 to 3 trillion? Or is it a more liberal, left of center, staffed by academics that kind of don't key things? I don't know that answer. I have my suspicions. And then the second thing is, what is going to be the effect by the year's end of things we've never seen before? And by that, I mean, we have never seen promises of $8 to $10 trillion in foreign investment. We have never seen a government say we're going to produce gas and oil like crazy. We have never seen these tariffs because there's a so, and we don't know we don't know the effect of everybody saying this massive tax cut and all these incentives for investment in the private sector. The weird thing about it is that the Economist, the Wall Street Journal, and these voices have all lost credibility, because you think the Wall Street Journal, after the stock downturn in March and said we were in a recession, this is the worst thing in history, it's all Trump's fault. And then when we covered all of that, the Standard and Poor had the best May in 30 years. And then you had low inflation, 2.1. You had good unemployment, 4.2. You had 170,000 new jobs. You had income increases, real income, real savings increases. Every barometer was perfect. And yet I read the Wall Street Journal on the weekend today, and it's all about corporate people are worried about a recession in the future. Stock people are wondering what's going to be the effect of the Trump. It's just like a broken record.
Well, yes, it is. And that's by design. If I can keep you in the worry land, then you don't have to worry about the product land. I can show you all the things and we've talked to people, multiple people all the time of saying, well, that's for you. When we try to tell them about certain things that happen when you buckle down and put your shoulder to the wheel and, that kind of stuff, bootstraps and all kind of thing. Oh, that's just you. You don't understand. For the rest of us, it's blah, 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 blah. So you're trying to help them to get out of a situation, and they're kept in a situation by somebody who's telling them, just wait, it'll get worse. They believe that for some reason, but not what you can tangibly show them is happening now. That's the situation. And the ones that are telling that person that is going to get worse, they're actually doing better off too. That's the crazy part. They're actually making money hand over fist because they know it's actually working. But they don't want you to make it. So they keep you in a certain loop. By the way, sometimes they'll ask you for money to make sure that they can go to bat for you. You're paying them to keep you in a bind while they're flaunting your money by going everywhere and doing what they want to do and are thriving by making your mindset as weak as it can be. It's quite the scheme.
It's just so much hatred that this guy might be able to pull off prosperity for the middle class, and all of the economic thinking, the neoliberalism and globalization and free but not fair trade will be proven kind of bogus. So it's hard to know. But if the economy, if Kevin Hassard, whom I know and like, if he's correct that the economy grows 4%, well, we don't know what the effect will be exactly on the 5.2 $1 trillion in annual federal revenue, but it might increase it by $500 billion. So we could see less deficits than we thought. Plus, we would get most of the area that could be walled. We'd get more border patrol. We get all of these institutions that are getting away with murder, remittances, universities. We'd have those addressed. So the verdict is out. We don't know what will happen, is what I'm saying. You could have so many jobs created. And then the other thing we don't know about the tariffs is this, and I mentioned it before, and I talked to some of my colleagues about it. So they say that tariffs are always bad, and you should have no tariffs. Okay, but the other countries have tariffs. So our economists never say to Europe, why do you have all those tariffs?
And fair enough question, but they'll never answer it. But to go back to something that he said about the wanting people to progress and all that stuff, the reason that will never really take place and we're not going to see it happen is because the want for people to be stagnant is more prevalent. And that's just, unfortunately, the way the things are right now. As much as Trump might want something, It does not. Let's just say we sieve up all. We make sure our country doesn't leak like a sieve anymore. So we go through programs after program after program. We weed them out. We say, okay, we don't need this one. Okay, no, we don't need that one. But if we do need this one, are there areas that this particular one can save money by doing things more efficiently? So if we go through things like that, like we do in a household, like you have um, 60,000 subscriptions that are taking almost $5,000 a month from you, or you have a Starbucks habit that you buy a coffee every morning for $6. At the end of the month, you tally up and you're wondering, why am I always down on money and I'm making this? Well, maybe if you cut certain things that you consider a habit that you don't need, you might want it, but you don't need it. At the end of a certain month, you might end up with a surplus of like $3,000. I mean, you still spend money, but you end up with $3,000 in your pocket. You wonder, where did that come from? Well, it came from when you went through your budget and you said, that one's got to go, that one's got to go, this one's got to go. And you realize, wait a minute, we've been giving an allowance to my son for doing what? He hasn't been doing any dishes in the house. No more allowance. Bam, that's gone. If we do that with a household, why is it so foreign to do it to a country? Where we have programs that we no longer need. We've never actually needed them. There are programs that are functional right now that should not be in function, or if they are function, they're functioning dysfunctionally. But we don't want to fix it. Everywhere we're hemorrhaging money, and there are people under the hemorrhage trying to collect it, and they're getting richer. Their endowments are going up. They're getting all kinds of perks and benefits. But the American people who are pouring money into this open wound aren't, because it's not coming back to them. If I were to stitch up these things and make sure that America functions formally really well, then the deficit will indeed be something of a less impact, because you are actually paying money into it to get it gone, as opposed to paying money into something where it just keeps disappearing into a black hole. And they don't want that because they're in the back of the black hole collecting all the money.
Why do you want a $250 billion surplus with us? China, why do you need $1.1 trillion surplus with us? Why are you doing that? India, why are we'd say all that. But what we don't say is, what is the optimum number? They're making so much money in foreign exchange. What is the optimum number of tariffs that they are willing to swallow and still get access in here and be profitable? Not necessarily as profitable as they were, but profitable enough they want to continue doing it. And they might put up with tariffs in the way that we put up with tariffs, only the difference was they would not be running deficits like we are. They would be running net zero trade balances. So my point is, Trump in April alone went from $75 billion in tariff revenue to 150. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a sneaking suspicion that China and the EU and Japan and South Korea and Singapore and Taiwan and Canada and Mexico are right now thinking, let's scream and yell about how horrible and how we're getting killed, but that's all public. Now you guys get in with your computers and tell me exactly what that tariff that Trump is implementing will cost us and how much we're profiting from the American market.
Now, the other part to it is this, okay? There are far more countries out there that are fleecing, is the word I would use, the American economy than we are fleecing them, and to the tunes of billions more. If we are going to make this rectification and make it soon to make sure that American populations are benefiting, then we should probably make sure we make it an impactful one. We have years to make up for. And it may seem on the surface that that's just uncontrollable. Why would you do? Well, because we have to take care of us. We live here. My family lives here. My future kids probably going to live here. My grandchildren are going to live here. I have to make it amicable for them to be here and be prosperous. If everything they work for is spilled on the floor, I have not done my job to try and rectify that situation before they show up. This is probably more than likely what he's trying to do, but it's very hard to do if everybody is taking a piece of your pie. The best you can do is put a lid on your pie and say, that's it. Nobody's taking any more pie. The rest of it is mine. But that's so unfair. But it's my pie. In fact, you know what? I want the piece you just took. It's mine. You didn't even ask me for it. Give that back. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to demand anytime you even want to touch the lid to my pie, I'm charging you quadruple. If you want this pie so badly, you're going to pay for it. Eventually, people are going to pay for it because the pie is pretty good. It's pretty stinking good pie. And they know that. And they're throwing a fit because they really have to have this pie as opposed to the other way around. Their pie is not as good as mine. I don't really need their pie. In fact, I have some of the best bakers here. I'll just have them keep baking me pies, but they'll make sure that no one else can come in and take it by putting up parameters around my pie. But when you do that, you're the bad guy. Okay.
And if we lose 10 or 20% of our profits, who cares? I don't want to lose all of them. And he's willing to do that and play chicken with us. So if that's true, it's not going to hurt you. I did interviews with the German and French media this weekend, email, questions. And that's one thing they keep talking about. They never keep talking about our tariffs are asymmetrical. It's, why are you doing this to us? We like you. Well, you don't. You're doing this because you're being subsidized by us. And to all, again, my economist friends, I mean that sincerely, not cynically. If trade deficits are so good, why does nobody but us like them? Why don't the Chinese say, hey, those Americans, those smart guys, they're running $1 trillion deficit. We got to copy that and get a bunch of foreign investment and everybody come over and, send. Or why don't the Europeans say, hey, man, the United States is doing so good. Let's get a 250. Or do they say they're so powerful they can absorb it? It's a bad thing, but they can still make money. That's why we're going to keep manipulating them. But
now, the same sentiment happens when people burn buildings down. What do they hear them say? You have insurance. You can absorb it. It's okay. We want to get our point across, so we're going to come bust your windows up, break your car, tear the tires off, light it on fire, bust everything up, break into your business, steal everything out of it, and then torch the bed. And because you know why? You have insurance. But they don't consider the fact that if I do have insurance, it'll take them possibly months to get me my check. Then it might take me months to rebuild what I have. In that time frame, I am not depending on insurance to pay me. I have no money. In fact, I'm having to fleece what savings I do have. And insurance doesn't cover that. The insurance is going to cover my building, sure. Replacing it, sure. But my income, insurance ain't going to pay that back. So the statement of you got insurance is absolutely wild to me. It's the same mindset here. They can take it. America is the biggest country on earth. It's okay if we fleece them for money every year. It's okay if we're a smaller country and we demand of them doing something for us, but we can't give nothing back to them. You will defend us. You're going to send your military here. We're going to make sure that you spend trillions in the military over on our field. And when you're going through stuff, crickets. How is it fair? It's not fair. And so it'll look very bullish for us to withdraw our things that we're doing in their country because we're going to finally take care of us. It might look like we're bullying, but what we're actually doing is finally dealing with our wounds. Our wounds have been so grave for the last 50, 70 years that at this point, we are in ICU. We're in ICU. And we're on the verge of death. And people are still complaining that we're getting treatment. What? Bro, look. At this point, we have to decide if America is actually worth saving or not. And it may take some drastic measures to do so.
But we couldn't do that because we don't have their resources. They could be a lot wealthier than they are, but they're not. But we're not going to do what they do. They're stupid. But just because Trump says something, that's what's so weird. If he has his fingerprints on something, people will reject both logic and their own prior positions just to disagree with it.
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal cannot just say, you know what, that guy is right on these, this. They can't do it. And the reason they can't do it is I look at the names of all of the journalists in there and I say, I remember you. New York Times, Washington Post, Politico.
If you enjoyed today's video,
it baffles me to no ends, really, it does, to see how America and the population of America deals with this stuff. It's almost as though we are becoming a country that's against ourselves while still trying to promote the idea of us being so independent. It's self-destructive at its core, but we want to dress it up in a suit. It's like somebody that's a high-end business person, but every night they go home, they binge on alcohol and cocaine and meth, every kind of drug you can think of. Before too long, all that suit wearing is not going to hide what's going to happen to your skin, happen to your hair, happen to your teeth. It's not going to hide it no more. No amount of makeup, no amount of cosmetics, nothing is going to hide what's going to happen to your body. You can wear the best suits. You're going to eventually start looking gaunt in the face, and the suits are going to droop on you. That's happening to America right now. We might have on the face that we're doing well, but we are not well. And the only way we can fix this at this point is to make sure that we shut down everybody else and deal with us. That includes monetarily, that relationally between people. It means in terms of people that are here legally, illegal. All of it has to happen internal. We have to have an internal shakeup. Will it happen? I don't know. They say most countries last between 250 to 280 years. We are at that point. So it's about that time that most places have collapsed. Roman Empire type thing, Alexandrian Empire, all of them, they didn't last for only so long. And then because of gluttony, because of decadence, and because of having something, they stop working for it, and eventually they die. Maybe we're next. However, we have a little bit of a different mindset, so maybe we might be able to fight through this and prolong our years a little bit longer as a place called America. How's it going to work? Unknown. Is it going to work? Unknown. But until we can put aside the childish ideas that emotionality will fix a logical problem, we're not going to fix it. It's not the same way. That's the only thing that we can deal with is logic at this point. We have to implement logic, and sometimes logic hurts emotions. But at the end of it, logic will always create a better source for your emotional outburst and a better way to handle your emotions. So I can only hope that what is going on will have a positive outlook. But will it? Only time will tell.